Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into a breaking story that is capturing the world's attention. The United States has just triggered what many are calling a chain reaction that could crush Russia's strategic standing on the global stage. This is not an exaggeration, but a reflection of the complex interplay of sanctions, military maneuvers, diplomatic shifts, and technological advancements that are now converging into a single moment in history. To fully understand what this means, we need to examine the background, the triggers, and the consequences that this chain reaction could unleash, not only for Russia and the United States, but for the rest of the world as well. For months, the tension between Washington and Moscow has been escalating, with sanctions tightening and military postures becoming more aggressive. However, what we are seeing now is not just another round of pressure or political statements. Instead, the U.S. has initiated a coordinated strategy that strikes at the very foundations of Russia's economic, military, and geopolitical capabilities. This goes beyond symbolic gestures. It's a comprehensive approach designed to weaken Russia's influence and limit its ability to project power in the long term. The first piece of this chain reaction lies in the economic realm. The United States, together with key allies in Europe and Asia, has launched a new wave of sanctions targeting Russia's energy exports, financial institutions, and technology imports. Unlike previous sanctions that were more selective, this new package is broader, more coordinated, and more difficult for Russia to circumvent. Energy revenues have long been Russia's lifeline, funding its military programs and sustaining its economy. By directly cutting off access to critical markets and technology, Washington is effectively tightening the economic noose. Analysts believe this move could shrink Russia's GDP significantly, and the ripple effect could create internal challenges that Moscow may struggle to contain. The second element in this chain reaction is military positioning. The U.S. has stepped up its support for NATO allies, deploying advanced systems and holding some of the largest joint exercises in decades. These drills are not just symbolic. They send a clear signal of preparedness and unity. Washington has also accelerated arms transfers and intelligence sharing with partners on Russia's borders, increasing the strategic pressure. The cumulative effect is that Russia now finds itself stretched thin, forced to divide resources and constantly react to multiple challenges rather than setting the agenda. Another crucial factor is technology. One of the most powerful moves the United States has made is blocking Russia's access to advanced semiconductors, aerospace components, and AI-driven military technologies. These restrictions are not about immediate effects, but about long-term capability erosion. Modern militaries depend on advanced electronics for precision weapons, communication systems, and surveillance. By cutting Russia off from these resources, the U.S. is not only hampering current military projects, but also ensuring that future developments are delayed or crippled. This kind of technological denial strategy has been described by analysts as a silent but devastating weapon, one that can dismantle a nation's ability to compete in the next generation of warfare. Diplomatically, the United States has also triggered a chain reaction by reshaping alliances. Over the past months, Washington has convinced neutral and hesitant states to align against Moscow. Countries that once tried to balance between East and West are now leaning toward cooperation with the U.S. and its allies. This realignment has reduced Russia's diplomatic maneuverability, limiting its influence in international organizations and cutting off potential lifelines. In particular, moves in energy partnerships, trade agreements, and military cooperation are isolating Russia further. Even nations that previously sought to maintain neutrality are now recalculating their positions, wary of being caught on the wrong side of history. Energy is another battlefield where the chain reaction is unfolding. The U.S. has increased its liquefied natural gas exports to Europe, reducing the continent's reliance on Russian supplies. At the same time, Washington has encouraged investments in alternative energy infrastructure, undermining Russia's leverage as a dominant energy supplier. For decades, Moscow used energy as both a carrot and a stick in its foreign policy. Now, as new suppliers step in and long-term contracts shift, Russia's grip on this sector is loosening. This represents not just an economic blow, but also the erosion of one of its most powerful geopolitical tools. Inside Russia, the consequences are already visible. Reports indicate growing discontent as inflation rises, unemployment spreads, and industries struggle without access to foreign parts and technology. The elites who once benefited from global trade and financial systems are increasingly constrained, while ordinary citizens face declining living standards. The U.S. strategy here is not simply about military confrontation, but about creating the conditions for internal instability, pressuring Russia from within as well as from outside. This two-pronged approach makes it more difficult for the Kremlin to maintain its narrative of strength and control. Perhaps one of the most critical aspects of this chain reaction is psychological. By orchestrating a series of coordinated moves across different domains, economic, military, technological, and diplomatic, the U.S. is projecting the image of overwhelming momentum. This psychological pressure is just as damaging as material losses. When a nation feels it is constantly on the defensive, unable to set the initiative, morale erodes both among leadership and the public. The perception that the U.S. and its allies are outpacing Russia in every field amplifies the sense of strategic isolation. Of course, Russia is not a passive actor. The Kremlin has options for countermeasures, whether through cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, or closer alignment with alternative powers. However, the effectiveness of these responses is increasingly limited. Cyber operations can cause disruption, but they cannot reverse structural economic decline. Disinformation campaigns may sway some opinions, but they do not rebuild shattered trade links or replace lost technology. Even partnerships with sympathetic states cannot fully compensate for the scale of coordinated Western action. What the U.S. has triggered is not a single blow, but a self-reinforcing sequence of events that collectively erode Russia's strength. The global implications of this are enormous. For other nations watching closely, the message is clear. The United States still wields the ability to shape outcomes when it mobilizes its economic, military, and diplomatic resources in unison. The chain reaction against Russia demonstrates that in the modern era, wars are not only fought with tanks and missiles, but with sanctions, alliances, and technology. This new form of warfare is less about territory and more about influence, resilience, and the ability to endure sustained pressure. For Russia, the road ahead is increasingly uncertain. Its economy faces long-term decline, its military modernization is being strangled, and its diplomatic options are narrowing. The chain reaction triggered by the U.S. is not about quick collapse, but about slow, grinding erosion, a strategy designed to weaken Moscow's capacity to challenge the international order over years, not days. This patience, combined with relentless pressure, may prove more devastating than any direct confrontation. Looking at the bigger picture, this moment will likely be remembered as a turning point in global power dynamics. The moves made today could reshape alliances, energy markets, and security doctrines for decades to come. If the United States' strategy succeeds, it will not only reduce Russia's influence, but also send a powerful warning to other states that might consider challenging the established global order. At the same time, the world must remain aware that such strategies also carry risks. Pressuring a nuclear power like Russia too far could provoke unpredictable reactions. The balance between deterrence and escalation remains fragile, and miscalculations could have serious consequences. Still, what cannot be denied is that the United States has set into motion a chain of events that is already altering the global stage. Each move feeds into the next, creating momentum that Moscow struggles to counter. Whether this strategy leads to eventual negotiation, capitulation, or confrontation remains to be seen. But one thing is certain. The chain reaction is underway, and the world is watching closely. So as we conclude this analysis, it is important to remember that this is not just about two countries locked in rivalry. It is about the broader question of how power is exercised in the modern era. The U.S. has chosen a strategy of comprehensive, multidimensional pressure, and Russia now faces the full weight of that decision. The events we are witnessing today could mark the decline of one era and the rise of another, a shift that will define geopolitics for years to come. That's the full breakdown of how the United States just triggered the chain reaction that could crush Russia's global position. The situation is still developing, and the consequences will continue to unfold in the days, months,